Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching this video from. My name is Denise Bellel, and I'm a serenity expert and positive intelligence specialist. Today, I'm here with the It's All Good. Look, it's here for a chat. And my guest today is Maria Belanic, and I'll tell you a little bit more about her in a second. And the reason why the show is called It's All Good, it's because it's very complicated. It's my favorite cup. It's all good. And that cup is like almost a liter. And I always fill up with water regularly to the day. But more than just that, it's my favorite cup. I say that it's all good all the time. Why? Because I found that whatever happened in the past, whether it's 1 minute ago or 1 year ago, I can't change it. So, what attitude do I want to have towards that event is that it's all good. Why? Because there's no point worrying about something that's beyond me that I can't help. It's behind me. I can't change it. All I can do is learn to live with it today and move forward. And then what about the future? What about thinking about events that are going to happen, whether in an hour or whether it's going to be in a year or in 6 months? Well, I can't create those anyway. Whatever happened. Sometimes things don't happen the way we expect, but what we can do is say it's all good. Whatever has to happen will happen, and live the life for today, like right now, being happy right here, right now, and making the best out of your life. So that's where the it's all good, it's all about. And people that know me, people that are in my group of friends and colleagues, they hear me say that all the time. It's all good. Regardless of the outcome, always look for the gift into whatever you're receiving. It's like the yin and the yang. There's always a little bit of negative in all the positive stuff, and there's always a little bit of positive in all the negative stuff. So all we can do is make the best of it. So my guest today is, as I said, it's Maria, and we're going to talk about Beyond Survivor to Thriver. Wow, that's exciting. I look forward. I'm sure that's going to help a lot of people in listening to this show today. So, what she says is that trauma leaves emotional, mental, spiritual, financial, and physical scars, which affect the family and future generation. By understanding the flow of grief, others can better understand the turmoil this causes to mothers. Grief is a topic that most people shy away from, and it's true. We usually don't want to talk about it, which is understandable because it's a sensitive subject. It makes most people uncomfortable. How do we deal with another person's sadness and pain? So, walking through her own journey, she comes to accept that and own the fact that she's always going to be grieving as a mother, and that's okay. What change? Sorry, because I she wrote it in the I and I put it in the she, so I'm get confusing here. I should have changed that before. See, it's all good. What changes is the ability to believe in herself, heal her body and mind. Now her mission is to support mothers who have gone through the loss of a child, which is one thing parents never want to have to go through, to navigate the grief journey and heal in a way that's right for the mothers that lose their child. So with that, let me welcome Maria. Woohoo! So thank you, Maria, for being here today. And I'm very honored to have you here because I know a lot of we have experienced a lot of grief in the last couple of years, and some are grief of the loss of a person, but we can also grieve the loss of a job. We can grieve a whole bunch of stuff people get stuck to, and they attach that to themselves and they live in that. So please, before we go further, please introduce yourself a little bit more and what has been your experience to get into this journey.
Well, Denise, I want to say thank you so much for having me on your show. And it is an honor to be here. And when you were speaking about, everything that's in the past, to let it go, it's easier said than done, right? I mean, we can say it, but how many of us really do it?
Mhm.
And I think these past years have definitely shown us that a lot of us are still stuck in sometimes 2019.
Yeah.
Right? Even though it's been like 2020, 2021, and we're now at 2022, and we're just 3 days in. And yet, as you kind of said, are we going to be letting go of what the past is and start moving forward in certain ways? I mean, one of the things that I look at is that what's the tone that we're setting, especially for our own selves. I mean, I have no control over what someone else does, as you
Mhm.
well
Absolutely.
know, right? Um, and we don't, but it's about our own inner selves and how are we finding our inner peace to move forward in anything that we do. And some of the things is, let's face it, we all have habits and routines that we do, and yet we never sort of check in or review. Is it
Mhm.
serving or is it not?
Yeah.
Is it bringing me more negativity or is it bringing me more positivity in my life? And as you said, going through my own journey after I've lost my son, I never even thought about it because I think we all live life automatic, right? There's a select few, and you are one that really looks at what life has to offer
Mhm.
and how are you going to transform? What is going to make things better? But I think for the most of us, and I was included in that, everything was automatic. I mean, I was in business beforehand. You kind of get up in the morning, you have your routines, and you do all these things, but you never really question anything. These past years, I think, have made people question in what do we value? What's our priorities?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. For sure. So what made you become like starting to work? You said, you mentioned that you had the loss of your son, but can you tell more about what brought you from the loss of your son to creating what you're doing now?
Yes, one morning, I, after 10 years, I all of a sudden looked at myself in the mirror. And when I say looked at myself in the mirror, how many of us see our reflections, but we just kind of glance and off we go? But
Too
this
often,
one
yeah.
morning, I really looked at myself.
Mm.
And in 10 years, I didn't even recognize myself of
Mm.
how I had let myself go um, in regards to my health, my self worth, my self identity, and just sort of living life as a survivor. It was just about surviving and getting through this day.
Mhm.
Not even really looking forward to the next day that was happening, but it was almost like, okay, so how am I going to get through this day? Like, when is it going to end? And that was 10 years. So if you can
After 10
imagine,
years of you lost your son, it took 10 years for you to come to that realization, right?
yes, yes. And most of the time, and I think any time, I mean, even through these past years, we've seen people when there's anything, and it doesn't matter what type of loss you have or what's happening in the world, we get this either flight or fight,
Mhm.
right? It's either we want to turn around and hide, or sometimes it's like I always go, it's the ostrich, that hides. We don't see what's going on. If we pop,
It's like
right, if we pop our head up, maybe the world has changed and we're just waiting for it.
yeah,
And
a lot of people are wishing that right now.
right, or else we fight. And I was in both. I was hypersensitive. Someone made a comment, and I think I would have almost chewed their head off. Yes, yes, it's and so when you're seeing this, you're kind of like, I, I, I can't do that. Like, I'm in my 60s, and if I want to have a rich life, we cannot keep doing the same things that we've been doing and
Yeah,
expecting a different result. Um,
absolutely.
it's like, I think there's that example that they say about the fly that's flying around the room, and it keeps hitting the glass, but there's that bit of opening. And if it were just to change just a tiny bit, we're not doing a whole major change, but just a little tweak,
1 inch,
1 inch, it would have freedom.
Yeah.
And in some ways, we're the same. I mean, we're doing the same things over and over again. We're allowing all the fears, the anxieties, the uncertainties to be within us and to keep us sort of from growing, from growth,
Mm-hmm.
right? And looking forward to what the possibilities could be. And as you said, we cannot bring the past back, right? If we had that magic wand or the magic pill, I'm sure we would have all used it by now.
Yeah, there's always things that we can regret, or I should have said this, or I should have done that, or the should, right? All the should, and but no, it's not possible. So you can't. And I feel when people are holding on to the past, all they do is they're just like, it's like having a little knife and kind of little stabs, right? It's not huge, it's not big, but it's like, I read a thing, like a quote on the weekend, that's about a drip of water on a stone, but it's that little, and it works both ways for productivity, but also
Mhm.
like that drip will create a dent in a hard stone, because if constant, and it will damage the stone. But it's the same thing with our negative thinking. It doesn't have to be like huge, but if we keep pushing that thought, or that grief, and staying in the grief, and staying in the should have, and wanted to change the past, well, that's going to destroy us in the end,
Yeah,
right?
that is so true. And, you know, and I mean, we see it throughout, um, in anything that we see. I mean, even when we're looking at as an as example of what's happening in the world today, we see how there's people that are adapting. There's people that are saying, no, this isn't real. And no matter which side that you on, I mean, reality is reality because we
Hmm.
make our own realities.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and it's not even from a different perspective, it's really from our own life experiences. And unless you want to have a growth mindset, and a growth mindset can mean anything, as you say, it's just little tweaks. It's about adding gratitude
Hmm.
in our lives, and it's not even about the big gratitudes. I started off just by saying, "Wow, I have a bed to sleep on."
Mhm,
Right?
mhm.
Can take a hot shower.
Yeah.
Um, just little things, and then that can be getting bigger and bigger. Because let's face it, if we're sitting and waiting for the world or the circumstances to change around us, we're going to be sitting here for a super long time.
Yes. No, we have, and I agree with you. We have, by being grateful, I found that I did a grateful experience exercise with a friend of mine this weekend that was going through some hardship, and then just the fact of saying, well, I'm grateful that I have a cell phone that I can talk to you with. I'm grateful that I have hearing, that I can hear you, you know like talking to me. I'm grateful that there's somebody invented the cell phone, but there's waves that circulates, internet, that we can talk to, like before everything had to be wired in, or like a landline, and somebody like invented the cell phone, and that it goes to the air, and who knows, nobody, like I can, not nobody, but the majority of us, we don't, if we could explain how that works, we don't know, right? We just believe that it works.
Yeah, that
So
is so.
everything in our lives, like the fact that we have hands to talk with, and the fact that I have clothes that is keeping me warm on my back, and all these things that people take for granted. But the more we becoming aware of them, and the more we are developing gratitude for these little things, then we'll have more things to be grateful for.
Oh, you are so on point
Mm.
on that. And It really is. I mean, if you think about it, it's so easy to look at the lack of what we're missing. Like, I don't have a Louboutin purse. I don't have, right? I mean, I'm going to the extreme,
Yeah, yeah, I don't have a car
right?
that runs properly. I don't have, like I don't have like $10,000 a month salary. I don't have, whatever that is. I don't have the love of my life. I don't have like whatever people lack, right? They do say, oh, like or I don't have my son anymore. Or for me, it's my cat. I had a cat for 15 years and I lost him in September. So I could say, oh, I don't have my cat anymore, and you don't have your sons anymore. And it's like we can stay in that forever, but what good is that going to give us, right?
And that is so true. And that's one of the other shifts that I think really helped, is to acknowledge
Hmm.
what it is. And I know I used to tell people it was like the before and after. Like your mind only remembers like before when he was born and after, or after he passed away, like before he was alive, after he passed away. And even though sometimes I still think like that, when it's the acknowledgement that you're going to say, you know what? Yeah, I got it. I'm going to be a grieving mom
Hmm.
throughout life. I mean, as long as I'm alive, I'm going to be grieving because, of course, I will always miss my
Yeah.
son, and any mom's going to miss her
Yeah.
child. The only thing is that grief takes on different forms,
Hmm.
and you could still thrive, right? There are many women and men, fathers, who have used whatever it from their tragedy into thriving to help someone else. And to
Hmm.
me, it's more like, if you've gotten to a certain level, turn around and give a hand up of support to
Yeah.
someone else who is just starting their journey.
Yeah.
Because at times, it's like everything else. You could feel lost. It's like with anything. I mean, I don't want to say learning because it's not really a learning curve. But any time that we've experienced something, we look at someone else to say, how have they handled it? Is there someone else who has gone through this? I mean, whether you're in business, I mean, if you're looking for a business mentor, you look at someone who's made it,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Even if they've lost everything, but they've turned around and have remade it because their mindset is completely different.
Yeah.
And so these are, I think, what we have to look at. We have to look at who are people who have become stronger from what they've gone through.
Yeah.
And if we can say, look, this person has done it, there's really nothing special about them, because when we're looking at humanity, we're all created equal. Well, we're supposed to, right? We
Yeah.
all start off with birth with nothing.
Yeah.
Um, And yet, there are many people in business who have actually made companies, have made, as you said, like have thought of ideas
Hmm.
that have helped humankind.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not even about helping, hundreds of thousands of people. It's about even just who your orbit is.
Yeah.
And that,
It's people like their life experience, right? And that's why people hire a coach like you and I, because we've been through certain experiences in our life, and then we took courses, and then we learned different things, and we went deep into a subject because we were passionate about it. And we, like for you lived the grief of losing your son. I've lost my parents, I've lost a brother, and now a cat. And but these are steps that we're going through, that we're learning ourselves. And by elevating ourselves into our problems, then we learn, and then we can take people that are starting, if we go this way, we're here now, and people that are experiencing those problems now, we can help them,
Mhm.
raise them to our level. And that's why people are hiring people like you and I, because we've walked the walk already. We've stepped into those steps that were difficult, and we've been through a lot of ordeal ourselves in order to grow and to get to that point. And when we hire, a coach, then it allows us and I have a coach, and I'm sure you have mentors
Mhm.
and coach also, that allows us to take us a little bit higher and even higher. So what would be a best like recommendation that you could give someone that is experiencing grief right now and has a hard time and is feeling stuck into that experience? So what would be a tip or
The
that you
first,
could give someone?
yeah, I think the first tip is really to honor themselves and what they are feeling, their emotions.
Hmm.
Because most of the time, what I found is that everyone wants to hide their emotions and what they're feeling. It's, um, I think, as I mentioned in the bio, grief is a topic and loss is a topic that nobody wants to talk about. It's uncomfortable. And with that, there's also other things that come up. I mean, there's depression, there's anxiety, there's panic attacks, there's fear.
Hmm.
And a lot of parents don't want to say that, especially moms, right? I always go, women, we all think that we have it all together. I don't know why we bought into this, but we did.
Yeah.
We bought into this super woman that we can have it all. Um, yes, in some ways you can, depending on what your core values are, but it's also about knowing what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and saying, you know what, if I feel like today that I want to cry, then do so.
Hmm.
The best tip I can say is keep a journal. Keep a journal of what your emotions are,
Yeah.
and to follow that, and also release. Because I think a lot of times we don't release anything. And I know I've given like, put the different letters of what it is, but really it's about giving yourself grace, the grace for no judgment, the grace to be kind to yourself.
Hmm.
Because as moms, and especially if a tragedy has happened, there's a lot of self blame, there's a lot of guilt. Um, and really, this is about no judgment, because we cannot have changed anything, no matter how much we want to have this
Yeah,
magic
regardless of the
wand.
situation. Yeah,
Yeah,
we can't change it.
no. I mean, if we could, I mean, I don't know, do we take a magic wand? I mean, I used to say when I was in real estate, I used to tell people if I had the magic ball, that would tell us, what
What's the best market and the best,
I'd be
like,
sitting on the mountain.
yeah, for sure. And what you said about women, I think it's so true that like we feel like we have to hold it together for others, right? With the pillar, with the one that is the strong, and we need to be there for the siblings. We need to be there for the husband. We need to be there for the friends. We need to be there for everybody else. And what people are lacking, women are lacking a lot, is self-compassion. And that's one of the component of my coaching too, right? Is self-compassion, is to be able to hold yourself and say, I'm suffering right now, and admitting it, and giving us the time to suffer, but not to dwell in the suffering, but to accept it, just like you said, right? And if it helps people to journal about it and write about your suffering and how it hurts and how you want to be supported, and and then ask for help too, I imagine, right? Not be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, that is so true. And I really liked how even you said at the beginning, it's about how do we find serenity in
Mm,
our own lives, right?
yeah.
It's about saying what brings me joy, and to have more of those moments. I mean, this isn't going to happen overnight, right? It's not like from one day to the next. I mean, as you said with the rock, for anything, whether it's a negativity or a positivity,
Mm,
it's doing things on a consistent
yeah.
basis, right? And over time. Now, again, someone could take a few years, someone many years. And so don't compare yourself to what someone else is
No,
feeling or going
for sure.
through. Because let's face it, I think we do that um, as a society, anyways. We're kind of like, oh, but that person only took like 10 days and then they did that. Well, guess
But
what?
that's what we see, right? That's what we see, but doesn't necessarily mean what they feel inside. People can put a mask and say, okay, that's it, grieving's over. But then when they're alone at night in their bed, it's a different story. So, but we don't know. It could be that they're beyond it and it's fine for them. But it could be also that they're putting masks and they're putting filters so that whatever the society sees, that it's all beautiful, but in the back of their heart and in when they're alone, it's a different story. So that's why we can't never compare ourselves with others, because what we see, it could be the reality, but it could not be the reality. And judging ourselves on, like, watching those magazines with the supermodel and the super curve is like, what you see, it's not necessarily what's true, right? So, and if you, and there's this stigma, you're off topic, but that's the stigma of younger women and even older women that
Mhm.
looking at those model and say, oh, I gotta have the perfect breast, I have to have the perfect ass, I have to, but in reality, that's the perfect Photoshop app, like ass and tits, like
That
it's. But that's the same thing when we look at people. Like, we don't know whether they're just playing a role when they're in public and in face of other people, and we don't know really what they're suffering inside. And that's why, like, for me, the way I approach people, let's say, on if somebody is angry and negative and all that, like, I don't label them as a angry negative person. I'm labeling them as, well, that person must be suffering a lot in order to be like that.
oh, that
So,
is a beautiful way of
and that
looking at people.
and then I give more compassion towards that person, more empathy, like, what path has that person had walked into in order to be suffering so much right now, to be so aggressive and negative, right? There's something lacking in their life. And that's the same thing with grief also. I imagine, like, people that are grieving in their own ways, like, you can or cannot tell someone, well, get over with, that's not their path. But there's a way for you, and it's awesome that you're there to help them, to show them a way to stop the stabbing, right?
Mhm.
Live with the grief, because we're always grieving. Like, there's still time. My dad died in 87, and that's a long time ago, and there's still times where I'll shed a tears thinking about him, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, he was my daddy. Just thinking about
Mhm.
him now, I feel teary, right?
Yeah.
But
And
it's
you know
not
what?
like I'm dwelling over it every day and I'm like, oh my god, I'm an orphan, both my parents died. And it's not like that. But it's the you think about the good thing we had together, and to think about what was missed, because I was 24 when he died, and it was just like, yeah, there's lots of my life that I miss having a father, right?
Yeah.
But there's steps, and there's way to accept that, and there's a way to cherish actually those little tears, because it's love, right? It's
Mhm.
love I have for my fathers, the love I had for my mothers, with die in 2009, I think. And all these things are just things that we have to learn to move through, and to keep it on us. It's sort of, we're building a little, like, our personality through that. And how do we want our personality to be, right? Do we want to be the crying Mary, or do we want to be the person that walks through it and is there and stay positive, but has respect for that grief, right?
Mhm. And you hit the nail sort of on the right. In regards about like any tragedy, especially grief, impacts our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I love how you explain that you see through the lens. You know, like you want to understand the person and see through the lens of what they're going through. And I always like to say, even about where our lives have gone, it's not better and it's not worse. It's different.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like being at a crossroads and you either decide A or B. You don't know which one is the right path because there isn't really a right path. You just choose one. And I mean, you can always switch into a different path and anything like that. It's just life becomes different. And it really is then about what are you doing to heal? What activities are you doing? And how are you making people then feel around you and yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's about really finding love. And I think that becomes as you said, like having the compassion, being serenity, and understanding where someone else is coming from. I really like
Mhm.
how you put that out together.
Yeah. So tell me, Maria, so what does working with you look like? So if somebody listened to us right now and say, "Oh, I'm experiencing a lot of grief and I'd love to be working with you." But what does working with you look like? What can people expect, and what can type of result? I know again it's results are different for every individual, but in general, so what could that look like?
What it would look like is to meet where they are at this point,
Mhm.
but it's really about whether the person wants to. And sometimes I'm still trying to find the word of moving forward. It's not really about moving forward. It's about saying, you know what, I want to do something different with my life. I want to find inner peace. I want to have inner peace. I want to allow the brokenness that I felt to shine so that way I can have a better life.
Mhm.
And so going through that, it's going through some different exercises of knowing, and also looking at to their health. Because one of the things that we find is that anyone who's gone through something, health is usually one of the things that suffers.
Comfort
Right.
food, right? I know a lot about comfort food.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
It's
we
one of my go-to, right?
and it is. You either, because let's face it, there's a reason why they call it emotional eating.
Mhm, mhm.
Uh, and it really is. So either you eat more of not knowing because you're in pain, or you
Yeah,
eat less of. And either way,
yeah,
um, there are health issues that come with it.
yeah, of course.
And one of the things is that you don't want to wake up one day and not only find that you're still grieving, but that you also have health issues that you could have done something about.
Yeah.
So that is something. And then not only that, it's about finding activities like what, as I mentioned before, about doing more activities that bring joy to you, looking at who is supportive. And one of the exercise is basically looking at the positive and the negative. And if that means letting go of some people that shouldn't be in your life,
Mm,
then so be it. And that's a
yeah,
hard one because at times there are people in our lives that even though they want to help us are actually hindering the healing process,
mhm.
right? Because it keeps you in more in because they're making comments or anything like that. They're not supportive. um, some people are very lucky and they do have a supportive family, supportive friends. That's why if you look at it, divorce is usually on the rise. um, because if it's a family, everyone deals in grief in different ways.
Yeah.
Sometimes it pulls the family together, sometimes it pulls them more apart. And the same
Mhm,
thing with
mhm,
finances.
mhm. Yeah,
um, Finances sometimes you don't even look at because you're not in a mindset. And even making huge decisions can be very challenging when you're coming from a place of fear, of anxiety, of just not knowing, like you're feeling lost. I think sometimes you become so indecisive.
mhm, mhm. So it's really like a full 360 approach in some ways, like looking at the life in general
Mhm.
and see where that grief has impacted the people you're working with, right? Like see how they would benefit from eating better, or they would benefit from revisiting their finance because they had let it go and now they're like they just um they were there's a word I'm looking for. They ignore problems, financial
Mhm.
problems to a point, and now you need to really pay attention to those issues and stuff. And yeah,
Yeah.
that can be quite difficult. So what do you have to offer for people that are listening right now? So how can they reach you, and what do you have to offer?
Well, they can reach me at mariabelanic8@gmail.com.
With the
I've
number
also,
8
with the
after
number
the
eight.
name.
Yes, I've also, I think, have included a free gift of self-care tips that
Mm,
they can start by doing very easily and just seeing the changes within them because it really is. When I started healing my body, my physical body, is when all of a sudden I could deal with the other issues. Because we all think it's
Mhm.
all emotional, and we're all focusing on the emotional. Like if I can get my emotional in check, everything else will fall in place. Not really, right? I mean, even for myself, my finances, within those 10 years, I lost making good financial choices.
Yeah, yeah, because like we kind of go in a little bit of depression, right? And when
Mhm.
you're in depression, then it's like, oh well, I don't feel like doing this, like, oh, I'll deal with that clients later, or and then
Yeah,
we lose opportunities, and then we lose money, and how do you bring that up, right?
yeah,
Like, how do
yeah.
you
So
bring back that
true, right?
energy?
And it's so true because sometimes you have to look at, especially if you have other children,
Mm-hmm.
what are you telling your other children when and I get it. We're so focused on our own grief that sometimes we can't look at anyone else's pain.
Yeah.
And so we have to sort of reel it in. Like, how do we look at someone else's pain? And depending on how old your children are, because they're going to be going through different things. And it really is. It's a huge challenge and struggle to be a parent. If you're by yourself, I don't know. Is it easier? Right there. I'm not going to say anything's easier or not. They're just different challenges.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. Well, this is fantastic. So what I'll do is I'll put the information on how people can reach you into the comments of these on these chats, and then just reach out to Maria and have a session with her. I think you gave also a complimentary session
I
for
give a
those that need,
complimentary,
just
yes,
to
a
see if
complimentary.
that's a fit, and if you can, if you can help these people, or if, it's always good to know if we're a fit, because nobody wants to give you money right off the bat. Yeah, I'm hiring you and don't even know who you are. So same
And
here, right?
yeah, so
So
true, right? And of course, I have a master class that's called Beyond Survivor to Thriver. And again, as you say, it's a compliment. I do offer complimentary 30 minutes because
mhm.
you're right. No one wants a coach that all of a sudden it's like, I don't agree with anything you say,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You want to
Exactly.
make sure it's a good fit
Yeah.
that you, right? We meet each other at where it is. Like I meet them
Yeah.
where they're at.
Wonderful, wonderful. So that information will be in the comment or in the read more below. And I would like to thank you so much for all the information you shared. And don't stay alone in your grief. Like, reach out, talk to people, and don't feel like you're a burden to people talking about it, because we need to too often, like at mental health or grieving or whatever, people feel like, oh, I can't talk about this, like people will judge me and all that. And it's amazing how you will realize that you're not alone. There's other people that are grieving, there's other people that are suffering, and it's not to start a grieving party and now everybody's crying together, but it's supporting one another. And that's what Maria has been doing and learning from experience, and now she's helping other people to move through that. So thank you so much, Maria. It's a pleasure to have you here today. And for those that are watching me on a weekly basis, I'm here every Monday at noon. And next week, I'm going to have Deborah Reynolds. And Deborah is an amazing woman, and she's going to give us a lot of tips on business and productivities and how to be awesome people. So don't miss out next week at 12 with Deborah Reynolds. And then it'll be great to have you here again. So thank you so much. And until next time, be kind to one another. Goodbye.
Hi, and thank you so much. This has been an honor, and I'm definitely going to put a plug in for Deborah Reynolds. She is one of my coaches.
There you go. We all have coaches. So until next time, goodbye.